Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland, and this is the house where Elizabeth Garret Anderson lived. You see with the blue plaque, that black door. So I'm in London. I'm in, well, what do you say, the Marylebone area. Elizabeth Garret Anderson is famous for being the first woman to qualify as a doctor in the United Kingdom, openly as a woman. There was James Barry, who posed as a man. In fact, it was a woman. We don't know James Barry's real Christian name, presumably had a feminine Christian name. Nor indeed was Dr. Garret Anderson the first British woman to qualify as a doctor, since Elizabeth Blackwell had moved to the United States and qualified as a doctor beforehand, an event which presumably inspired Elizabeth Garret Anderson, because that was widely reported in the press in this country. Anyway, so she's born in the East End of London, and her father was a prosperous businessman who started with a pawnbroker's shop, set up several other businesses, and done very well in trade. His family had lived in Suffolk for at least 200 years before that, and so she then moved to Suffolk and spent most of her childhood there. So she's brought up by a governess whom she really looked down on. She quickly realised that she was smarter than her governess. So she was one of 11 children, some brothers, some sisters, and famously her younger sister, Millicent Fawcett, was a famous feminist and political activist. Elizabeth Garret Anderson was a bit of that as well, but better known for her medical achievements, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on today. So she then went to a girls' school in Blackheath, this area of London. Again, she felt that her teachers were decidedly below par, but nevertheless, she was a voracious reader and largely autodidactic, was quite well versed in French and German, as well as English, and read so many of the classics of English literature. So as the family was prosperous, she was able to go on holiday to some nearby European countries. She attended the Great Exhibition, which is a real polymath, not just gifted in languages and the humanities, obviously in maths and sciences. So she then came up with a very eccentric and seemingly impossible goal of becoming a doctor. And everybody knows that only men could be doctors in those days. But she decided she was going to be one. A doctress? What was that? People would say. Little better than a wise woman or something like that. Anyway, she decided to be a surgery nurse, and nursing was just becoming formalised and regulated after Florence Nightingale. So a nurse obviously assisting at surgeries, imagine one of the most difficult sort of things to do, and she was highly competent at that. And then she decided she qualified as a doctor, so she wasn't allowed to enrol in any medical school, and hospitals often organised their own education, not universities as such. So there was a subject called materia medica, which is kind of the background science to it, really. And so she passed exams in that, and then wanted to go to the next stage, the clinical stage, and applied to every university in the United Kingdom that offered medicine, and every single one of them rejected her despite her excellent scores. But she managed to enroll in the Society of Apothecaries. An apothecary really is a pharmacist. And there wasn't such a clear distinction between a pharmacist and a doctor in those days, so she qualified as one of those. It's like in German or French, or not French, sorry, or Dutch, or even what else? Was it in Romanian? I think so. And Russian, apotheker, apothecary, like a chemist or pharmacist. So she did that, and then she should have been allowed to work in a hospital in order to be fully qualified as a doctor. No hospital in the United Kingdom would accept her. A hospital in Paris did, and that's how she was fully qualified as a doctor. She came back to this country in the 1860s and was anyone going to allow her to practice medicine. She set up her own private practice. It wasn't as difficult to do so in those days. I know there's so many hoops to jump through and so many stages and exams. It wasn't like that till the 20th century. But then there was a big cholera outbreak in the 1860s, and people could no longer afford to be sniffy and saying a woman can't possibly do it, and the authorities just accepted her because they needed all the doctors they could get. So she had managed to get in through these various back doors, which were then closed to women. Then various rules were saying that specifically excluding females from any of the routes that she'd taken, like joining the Royal Society of Apothecaries. So then a law was passed in 1876 saying that women must be allowed to qualify as doctors. Nobody was allowed to make any rule which was going to be an impediment to a woman qualifying as a doctor. So she campaigned for greater rights for women, the Married Women's Property Act and so on, women to have the right to vote in local elections and parliamentary elections, and indeed she was elected mayor of Aldeburgh. She married a wealthy man whose family had made their fortune through steamships, I think passenger ships rather than cargo mainly. So she had at least one son, at least one daughter. Her daughter followed her footsteps as a doctor and died only a few years ago, if I've got that right. No, that can't be true. must have been considerably earlier than that, because Elizabeth Garret Anderson lived to the age of 81, a very great age at the time. Even if she was like 50 or something when her daughter was born, she must have died quite some time ago. And I think of her granddaughter or something. Somewhat attracted to Liberal and then Labour politics, but never stood for Parliament. I'm not sure she's a member of either of those parties. And so helped to set up a hospital for women and children, and indeed at University College Hospital is a Garret Anderson wing in her honour. So very much supported her younger sister Militant's efforts. Militant? Well, that is a paralepsis, is that the word? Because both are partly true, as she was a Labour militant. Her campaign for women to get parliamentary suffrage, but wasn't as explicitly political as her sister, more involved in medicine, and indeed qualified as a surgeon. The first woman to qualify as a surgeon in the United Kingdom as well. That is enough about Elizabeth Garret Anderson.